Good morning. Welcome to vlog 3 in the Countdown to Ironman Lake Placid series. We are now 25 weeks out from the race. As a quick reminder, this series is not a how-to train for an Ironman, but rather kind of a description and a walkthrough of what training is like on a week-to-week basis. There's going to be two parts to this vlog, just like all of them. We'll talk about some training specifics in the first part, and then in the second part, we'll talk a little bit more about the race specifically and provide some tips on a weekly basis. I was fully prepared to come on today and talk about a boring training week where everything went perfectly according to plan and we just got it done, which I was kind of hoping to have. And that was the case until I woke up this morning and realized I did something really silly. So I want to just let everyone know about it. So, what you have to know about our family here, both my wife and I are training for an Ironman Lake Placid. And so Saturdays, just like many of you probably have the same schedule, you have your long bike rides. And we very much are in the camp of make sure that every ride period or every workout period is fueled appropriately. So we typically just have Gatorade on hand at all times. And this morning, we probably, between the two of us, needed something in the ballpark of like 7 or 8 bottles of Gatorade. I went shopping last week and screwed up and didn't buy it. So as of this morning, we were probably only had like 2 or 3 bottles left. So I was awake by myself. I'm sure you all are feeling this way, but I'm tired. These workouts are getting longer. I don't even want to really do it in the first place. And then you have this, like, on top of it, you're like, okay, now I can't even fuel this workout the way I typically want to. And I'm a little bit frustrated about that for myself. But then I'm also frustrated that my wife, who's working really hard on all of this, now I've also screwed her up because she's not going to have enough Gatorade for her, or just electrolytes for her workout after the fact. And I don't want her to, kind of wake up and then feel kind of stuck, probably the same way I'm feeling. Um, so it was one of those mornings that it was just hard to get going. And I got into the workout and, it went, but I was struggling the whole way. I actually think I was fine. I think the whole thing was just in my head. And I think that all the struggle that I had was just mental. Just wasn't feeling it. And I'm sure many of you listening have experienced the same thing. Listen, all's well that ends well. I just went with water. I took 1 bottle of Gatorade and just went with water for the rest of it. And then just I ate 2 Cliff Bars along the way, just sort of nibbling on it, and as I went, which worked fine. Again, the problems that I had, I think, were just made up in my head. Um, and then after the workout, I was able to run out quickly to the gas station down the road and buy a bunch of bottles of Gatorade. And my wife Julia is downstairs getting her workout in right now. So, um, you know, everything is going according to plan until you screw something up, and then it's not, and you got to figure it out on the fly. That just seems to be training every single week for us. But there is something really good that came out of this, and what I will say is every training cycle that we're going through for an Ironman, we do try to make note of certain workouts throughout the year um, that you need to remember because they can really help you mentally on race day. And even though today's workout was not great for me, um, I was proud to get through it because the entire time my brain was just telling me to quit. I didn't want to keep going. And so you make it through, and you feel kind of proud of yourself when it's all done. Now, this is not a personal best. The data is not that great, but it is important to remember these workouts because ultimately, when you get to race day, you are going to need to come up with a kind of a mental race plan, and kind of having these little um, having some arrows in your mental quiver um, can be really helpful. And workouts that you struggled through can be really impactful. And you can kind of call on those workouts, say, hey, I got through that workout back in January. I can get through this, and So, a workout like today, even though it was frustrating, it can ultimately provide some value. So, what I did was I wrote my wife like a little note, which I typically will do um, later in the year as as I start riding outside and running outside more. Typically, I'll leave before she wakes up, so I usually jot down a little note. Um, and I wrote one this morning. I think what I'll literally do is take that note and put it in a folder, and that's going to be my little tickler folder for when we have to talk about kind of mental preparation ahead of the race. We'll talk about that probably in like 22 weeks or something like that. We'll start talking about that a little bit more, but um, it was a reality of mine this morning, so I wanted to share. Hey, okay, so back to what I was originally planning on discussing today, which is really a follow up from last week. Last week, I made a brief comment about the amount that you should be training at this point. And the honest answer is that there's many people that are training lots of hours and people that are training less, and really all of it is okay. You can get to the finish line without huge training volumes at this point. And the comment that I made was the right amount of training for you is the amount that your body can handle consistently and that your schedule can handle consistently. So what I wanted to do today is just share this PDF that I put together, and I'll link to it in the description of this video. But this is something that I think can be helpful for those out there training, and feel free to just download it yourself. What I really want to call attention to is RPE here, which is rate of perceived exertion. And this is, I think, really important for us as we kind of go through our workouts, especially this time of year. It can be a good time to really get tuned in with your body. This is just a measure of how are you feeling in your workout today. Today's workout for me felt like about maybe like a 6-ish. My target was to stay aerobic, so that's about where I wanted to be. And then I've also included just also some of these intensity zone models that are common. If you have a Garmin, or most watches will report out a 5-zone model. Many people are at the bare minimum measuring heart rate, and this can be found pretty easily within like your Garmin system. The coaching service that my wife and I use, we typically stay more at like a 3-zone model, but you can see and use this graphic as sort of an overlap and understand where you should be in all of these different models. You'll see from an RPE of 1 to 3, generally you're pretty much in a pure recovery mode. 4 to 6 is aerobic. Maybe high 6 to 8 is threshold. Anything above that is just going to be anaerobic with a really high output. So again, this is going to be something that we should all familiarize ourselves with, especially when thinking about the intensity of our workouts. So from a working out standpoint, you have the amount of hours that you can put to working out, but then also the measure of intensity that you have on a week to week basis. That's really where, say, like a coach can help, or you might have to do a little bit more digging for yourself personally. A lot of people hear about like the 80-20 rule. That's a great way to go, just to keep it simple. But, frankly, you are going to stay at different intensities at different times of the year as well. So it's not as cut and dry as you always want it to be. And that's where seeking some guidance can be really helpful. But I really bring this up because as we go through our workouts, we are going to be very reliant on technology, right? I wear my heart rate monitor for every single workout. I look at my zones on this from 1 to 3, but I can also look at it from a 1 to 5. And I know, like for today's workout, I was staying in zone 1. And I get a nice clear readout. I know what my zones are, and I can just go from there. What you want to do is go through your workouts and focus on what does that correlate to on an RPE scale. And I'll talk about the why behind that in just a second. But RPE is just how you're feeling at any given time. So what you want to be doing is have a real clear understanding of how you're feeling in any given workout and how that correlates to these intensity zones that are often tied to the technology that we have. Ultimately, you want to show up on race day being fully tuned in with your body and knowing kind of where you are at any given time, even without necessarily looking at the technology. All right. So why are we talking about RPE and the intensity model PDF that I just put together? Why are we talking about that right now? Why is it important to familiarize yourself with and get more in tune with yourself as you go through all of these workouts as we finish the last 25 weeks of training here? And the answer is because you can't always rely on technology on race day. And what I pulled up here is this is actually a graph of my heart rate during a marathon run. Um, and this was, I think, 2 years ago. And what, I always run by heart rate, I rely on it heavily. But this is really what got me thinking about RPE and really being more in tune with myself. So during this race, everything was going fine. I was hitting my targets. I was targeting about like a 155 to a 160 heart rate. And then I got to, let's see, it's about an hour and a half into the run. And then all of a sudden, boom, my heart rate just goes absolutely nuts. Now, I'm 40 right now. I was 38 when I did this run. My max heart rate is probably like 180, something like that. And it has me well above 200. So I'm in the middle of this run, and all of a sudden I have no reliable heart rate data. So it lasted for a little while, maybe about a half an hour or so, where I didn't have any data. But when you learn to rely on this data so much that you start to panic when you don't have it. And I knew I wasn't having like a cardiac event or anything like that. I was feeling okay. And the profile of this course, especially where this was in the run, this was a flat bike path. So this wasn't, crazy hills or anything. I just kind of knew like I lost my data. And I'm sure many of you have felt that before too. So coming out of this race, this was really the lesson I learned is to like, I need to get more in tune with my RPE so that when something like this happens again and I no longer have data, um, I'll know how I feel. I'll know what RPE I need to be at. And then I can just sort of cruise along. And hey, in this case, I got the data back. But in other cases, you don't. We've all been on training rides where you lose it and, it makes it kind of harder. But anyway, I say this, and this is kind of my race tip for the day. But what I think we should do is go home with a little bit of homework. So if you're watching this, what I want you to do is play the intensity game. So this week, and do this every week, do this every workout if you want to, but test yourself out. Go 10 minutes without looking at your data. Try to guess where your power is or where your heart rate is, and get really tuned in to that rate of perceived exertion as you go through your training process, right? The closer to race day you get, the better at this you will get. And then if you lose your data on race day, you're halfway through, and just like me, your heart rate goes crazy, doesn't even matter because you know how you feel and you know where you're supposed to be from an RPE standpoint, and you can just cruise. So that's our homework I'm going to leave us with today. Good luck to everybody training. Thank you all who have shared, the positive feedback about this. I'm definitely going to keep doing it, and I'm just really excited to move forward here. So have a great week of training. We are again 25 weeks out. We have a long way to go, and we'll see you next week. Thanks all.